This is a real moment here, folks. Stacey Abrams is looking like she's going to lose yet again. And there are some questions for the governor's race in Georgia as to whether she will retain her title of the fake governor of Georgia or she will relinquish her fake governor title.
So bad, Buck. I want to know how you and I were talking about this off air, because how is she going to handle her loss? Because when she lost by 50,000 votes in 2018, she claimed that the election was rigged against her and that, as you said, she was the fake governor of Georgia. She might lose by 10 points in Georgia. I mean, this is not – the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has her down by 8. Marist had her down by 11. She's run an atrocious campaign and is getting destroyed.
So here she is. She's on a panel. She was on a panel where I'm trying to make sure that I find what this panel was exactly about. But she was on a panel, and she said about the issue of fetal heartbeats, right? Remember, the Mississippi law that went all the way up to the Supreme Court had to do with fetal heartbeat. Here is Stacey Abrams, who wants to be the next governor of Georgia. I just want people to hear it, and then we will analyze. Here's what she says about fetal heartbeat.
It's medically false. It's biologically a lie. There is no such thing as a heartbeat at 6 weeks. It is a manufactured sound designed to convince people that men have the right to take control of a woman's body away from her.
So let's say what we said there, because some people might not have heard it that clearly because that audio is not perfect. She said that the heartbeat that you hear on a sonogram is not real. It's manufactured, designed to take away women's rights to make a choice by men. I'm paraphrasing.
Here, I have the quote. It is a manufactured sound designed to convince people that men have the right to take control of a woman's body. I mean, I don't say this lightly. This is deranged. This is deranged.
I shared that video clip, and I'm getting attacked because people are saying, oh, what are you talking? Look, here's what I will say, and maybe we can open up phone lines for other people who have had the opportunity, 800-282-2882. You just heard what Stacey Abrams said. For many of us, and I will put myself in this camp, I've got 3 boys. And when you get to go and hear the heartbeat and find out the sex and all of the other things that a sonogram provides, it is a unbelievable experience that I hope everybody out there who is a parent, Buck, I hope you get to experience it one day. It's an unbelievable moment to get to be there with your spouse and see for the first time inside of her pregnant stomach that baby and hear that heartbeat, right? And then going on and being able to see what the sex is going to be if you decide to find out in advance and all those things. For Stacey Abrams to argue that essentially the ultrasound, the sonogram, and the heartbeat, the first time that you hear the heartbeat, is not real and is manufactured so that men believe they can essentially control women's bodies is so outrageous and outlandish. Now, I can't believe she's saying it.
She's wrong on many levels. And for one thing, men are often the ones who are very supportive of the abortion movement because they want to be able to push or coerce or convince a woman, hey, you know what? So this notion that
sex
men
with no
controlling
consequences. There are lots of yes,
yeah, no, exactly. Sex with no consequences. There are a lot of women out there who have children who are ardently pro-life, and many of them, millions of them, listen to this program. But Stacey Abrams, what she's trying to argue here, apart from the craziest thing, which is that this is about men controlling women's bodies, that's just the rhetoric of Planned Parenthood and the lies that are all around this. But also, okay, so it's cardiac tissue in a fetus that is pulsating rhythmically. So she's essentially trying to say because it's not a full-grown heart with an aorta and the different chambers of the heart and all the rest of it, that it's not actually a heartbeat. You know, at some point this starts to be, okay, it's a brainstem in the fetus, but it's not a fully developed brain. So does that mean that it's, what are they going to call it? This gets to where the life begins debate, and it also gets to the way that they try to control with language what is so obvious. I mean, Clay, to your point, when you saw your child, when you saw your boys in the womb, you were seeing life. I mean, that is actually life.
It is an and that's why I said to open up the phone lines. Like, however you want to classify what exactly the heart, however you want to medically define a heartbeat and all those things. The idea that the ultrasound and the sonogram and that entire process is designed to give men control over women's bodies is frankly an insult, because my wife's gynecologist and the woman who delivered her our baby is a woman, right? And so are very many of the people who are working in these fields to share the first image. But like many parents out there, you want that printed off, right? I mean, I would bet a huge percentage of our parents and grandparents in this audience have looked at the sonogram of their unborn child and just been I'll tell you what I was.
It's their baby.
I was
your
in
baby.
disbelief that you could see that, right? The idea that you put the little cream or whatever it is on the stomach and that you start moving
gel,
around.
I believe, yes.
Yes. I mean, it is magical, that moment, that experience. And for Stacey Abrams to be in the closing part of her campaign, look, Buck, she said that Georgia was the worst state in the nation. She, memorably, we talked a lot about this, wore no mask when all the kids around her had to wear a mask. I mean, her entire campaign has been a disaster. But for her closing argument to be, all of you who think you're hearing your baby's heartbeat are actually just members of the patriarchy who are having men's control of women's bodies. This is one of the most tone-deaf things that I have ever seen a politician say down the stretch run, especially in a state like Georgia.
I think it is calculated on her behalf insofar as she's going to need the CNN executives and the publishing houses and et cetera of the Democrat apparatus much more than the Democrat voter, because she's going to lose. And this is essentially locking her in for a future of left-wing speaking engagements. She's going to become essentially a celebrity of the Democrat apparatus instead of an actual viable politician, at least for a period of time. So this is pandering, I think, to the Planned Parenthood apparatus and all the rest of it in the final moments here. And keep in mind, Clay, she said on The View last week, maybe we can even track down this audio, abortion at 9 months of a pregnancy. Anytime you talk to somebody about this who's a liberal, they're like, that's not a thing, and it doesn't happen, and nobody... That is a lie. It is a thing. It is a thing in the law, and it is something that Stacey Abrams said that she supports. In fact, she said, the quote is, until time of birth in some cases, which is another way of saying Stacey Abrams believes that a baby in the 9th month of a pregnancy, 40 weeks, however you're going to gauge this, is not a baby, is not a human being. How does she explain this?
She can't. And I thought J.D. Vance, who we had on last hour, actually did a good job of explaining this because his opponent in that Senate race, Tim Ryan, has said the same thing essentially as Stacey Abrams, which is 9-month abortions are okay, just like Stacey Abrams did. In other words, she supports abortion to the limits of the law. And that's not where the vast majority of the American population is. Most Americans believe that first trimester, in some way, there should be a line drawn. Where exactly people can agree and disagree. And some people believe that there should be no limits at all for rape and incest, health of a mother. Everybody has a variety of different opinions there. After the first trimester, it is actually an incredible minority position to believe. And by the time you get to third trimester, only about 10% of Americans believe that that should be legal.
By the way, we have experts. We have people that run sonograms who are calling.
Yeah,
right
okay.
now
Well,
to
this
talk.
is fabulous. Am I an idiot, or is this a pretty? I just want to hear from everybody else out there who has experienced this. When I saw this Stacey Abrams quote, my jaw dropped. Maybe I'm
think
just
about
an
all the
imbecile.
movies, by the way, where the husband and the wife, or the boyfriend and the girlfriend, they go to the doctor's office, and the doctor goes, "Look, you can see your baby's heartbeat. It's the patriarchy. It's a conspiracy."
I legitimately, my jaw dropped when I saw her say this.
I mean, apparently they should go in there, and the doctor's supposed to say, it's just a clump of cells. Oh, okay, sure. All right, Clay and Buck Show, we got them teed up here, and we have experts who want to weigh in. Because I will say, Clay, thank you for pointing this out. there are a lot of people who are weighing in online right now, at least on Twitter. A lot of blue checks, a lot of libs, a lot of lunatics. They have taken off their double mask long enough to look at the screen to say that there is no such thing as fetal heartbeat. It is manufactured.
They're furious at me for sharing this video and saying, hey, actually, I remember, looking at the heartbeat. And to your point, I think it's important. Like, yeah, of course the heart is not fully developed, just like the brain is not fully developed. I mean, it is a baby in utero growing, but you can see the heartbeat. And all I will say is when you can hear that heartbeat as a parent, and I'm just a dad, not like I'm carrying a baby. I'm not a Democrat. I don't believe men can get pregnant. But I got to tell you, it was a pretty amazing experience.
Also, what is the crossover between people who say fetal heartbeat isn't a real thing and people who say men can get pregnant? I guarantee you it is 100%. The science people,
that is actually
100%
crossover. That is actually 100% accurate.
So we have Amy in Louisville, Kentucky, who is a registered sonographer and has been doing ultrasounds for 15 years. Amy, what's going on here?
Hey, Clay and Buck, love your show. I just felt compelled to call today. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I see this every day. We can detect fetal heartbeat audio and see it visually at 6 weeks and 5 days. Transabdominally. Transvaginally, it's 5 weeks and 5 days. This is
so when you do this for a living, when you have the mom and the dad or family members in there and they experience this, I mean, it's an incredible moment, right? I mean, so for her to say this is wild to me.
It's I don't know what she's smoking, but it's not accurate.
But have you ever, Amy, have you ever come across this from like other practitioners or her? I honestly, until today, had never heard the argument. We've been talking about fetal heartbeat bills. I think Planned Parenthood even admitted that a heartbeat is detectable at 6 weeks in their previous literature. So where does this even come? Have you heard this argument before that it's not a heartbeat, that it's an ultrasound just making a noise?
No, there's no argument. This is just a statement that she made that's not based in fact. I mean,
so that's what we thought. I tell you, Amy, it's amazing to see how many people online who have MD next to their name right now on Twitter are rushing to Stacey Abrams' defense on this one. Amy, thank you for your expertise. Appreciate you calling in. Dominic in Douglas, Georgia, where this race is going to play out for the governor's mansion. Dominic, what do you got for us?
Well, first, thank you guys so much for what you do to be those voices of sanity in this insane world. This is just another example of Stacey Abrams stepping in it and the ridiculous desperation that they have to try to hold on to power. Anybody would tell you that a fetal heartbeat is real and that is what determines a life that is growing within the mother. For most of us, this has never been about taking the rights away from the mother or the woman. It is about government's responsibility to protect human life. Whether there's sentience, whether there's viability, that would be determined in time. But that is a human life determined by a heartbeat that we have a responsibility to protect. And Abrams has done it once again, proven how desperate she is to be in power.
Dominic, go ahead, Clay.
That was fantastic calls from both these guys so far, right? I mean, I saw this, and for many of us, I think, who were fortunate enough to become parents, that experience of hearing that heartbeat for the first time, of seeing your baby for the first time, is an indelible moment in our lives. And for her to be saying that it's designed by men to try to take control of women's bodies is, I think, just it steals an incredible moment from virtually every parent, and it's false.
And that Stacey Abrams, who said last week that an abortion at 9 months of her pregnancy, would say this out loud. I mean, that is on the same moral plane as child sacrifice in the Aztec Empire of 500 years ago. I'm just saying, it really is. Clay, we have... Oh, you had an update for us.
Yeah, look, I wanted to look this up because I'm not an expert, but again, I have been fortunate enough to get to watch 3 different fetal heartbeat experiences where you go in and they do the ultrasound. And if you missed it, Stacey Abrams claimed that that's not real and that is a manufactured sound designed to basically convince men to have control over women's bodies. And a lot of people want to weigh in on this. But a fetal heartbeat can be detected by a vaginal ultrasound between 5.5 and 6.5 weeks, which is what Stacey Abrams said was not possible. And that is according to the American Pregnancy Association. That's cited in the New York Post. Was just reading that during the most recent break because, people came after me on social media for sharing this. And again, I'm not an expert on pregnancy, but I'm fortunate enough to have 3 healthy boys that my wife gave birth to, and I have been able to watch and be involved in several of those ultrasounds. And that moment when you can hear the heartbeat is pretty profound, and see it. And so I think, Buck, we got a bunch of people who want to weigh in, if I'm not mistaken, on this storyline, which is really just an epitomization of the failure of Stacey Abrams' Georgia gubernatorial campaign, which has been, frankly, an unmitigated disaster for her and may well lead, as the people of Georgia well know, to a potential double-digit loss. I mean, she's down 11 points according to Marist, 8 points according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. 47 days until the election. Brian Kemp is trouncing her. Still have to get people to polls, all of the requisite, additional statements there. But she is going to lose, and it's not going to be particularly close.
Jane in New York is an abuse counselor who wants to weigh in on this. Jane, thank you for calling in.
Hi, yes. I just want to point this out quickly. I used to be on child protection team up north where Bernie Sanders had his reign of terror. And Planned Parenthood, I was called one day to Planned Parenthood. A friend called and said, will you come and talk to this young woman? Can you talk her out of having an abortion? A friend let me in the room. This woman had a baby, 6.5-month-old baby, which they delivered and put the baby on a table. I was begging the young woman. I said, I have a couple who will adopt this child. And they had brainwashed her so completely that they put this 6.5-month-old child, and I want people to listen to this, they put straps around his throat and his chest, and they restricted his breathing until the child died. And this is a very common occurrence, and I don't want people to think this is a rare thing, because it isn't. And I would like for someone to answer this question for me. If you have a baby, say it comes early, 6.5 months along, you take that baby home and you're rocking him or her, and you think, let's say 12 hours later, gee, I guess I don't want this baby anymore. So you let that baby suffocate. Aren't you going to be charged with murder in that case?
Yes.
Yes.
The answer is, of course, yes, you will be.
And the analogy that I would, and thank you for the call, the analogy that I would make, and I've made it on this show for a long time, is we've got a lot of violent crime going on. If, unfortunately, a woman who is out is murdered, and she has a viable fetus inside of her, and that baby also dies, that's a double murder. And that's a double murder in almost every state in America. Well, if it's a double murder, how is it at 7 or 8 months old inside of the mother's stomach considered to be a murder? But if it's a voluntary abortion, it's allowed. That is a really difficult question for people to answer. And I just want you all to think about that, which is why so many of these jurisdictions allow a murder prosecution in the event that baby is killed by someone else. It's a double murder if the mom dies inside with a baby who would have been viable outside.
The fight for life and truth and freedom continues here at the Clay and Buck Show tomorrow. Be sure to join us then. And please spread the word about what we're doing here. It's critical that we reach as many people as possible, especially in this election season.